Yeah, so I can't present to you and record, and oh my gosh, it was causing so many problems. So I'm just going to try and screen record. And the cool thing is it'll be on Schoology, so if you guys want to go back and watch biology class at home when you're bored, you can feel free to do that. What are you guys laughing about? You don't do that? I don't know. You never know. Maybe you'll feel like it. All right, but anyway, we're going to talk about this. We're going to define these two words, biomagnification and bioaccumulation. So let's just talk about this. Magnify. You guys heard that word before, yeah? Magnify. So think about like a magnifying glass. It means to make something bigger. So magnify, magnification. Accumulate or accumulation, it means to build up. So think about snow building up, accumulating. They talk about snow accumulating. Right now it's not snowing, but the other day, a few days ago when it snowed, they'd say like there was 4 inches of accumulation. So that's when something builds up. The last word is concentration. I know some of you asked me about this on Tuesday. Usually when you talk about concentrating, you talk about focusing on something. But for molecules, it's how many molecules are in an area. So this would be low because there's just a few. This one, if you're watching the video. And this one will be high because there's more in the same space. High concentration, low concentration.
Or have you guys ever had like juice from concentrate where it's like you have to add water? Like Kool-Aid, you do that too. So you have the concentrate powder, and then you add water so it like spreads it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same with, you see that word a lot of places. So let's pretend that there's a factory, okay? And this factory is doing what factories do, and they're just making their products. But whenever you make something, usually when you make something, there's going to be some waste, right? Here you can see some like pollution going into the air. Sometimes there's waste that actually just comes out of the factories and people have to put it somewhere. Hi, welcome. People have to just put it somewhere. And let's pretend that there's a body of water very close to this factory. And maybe it's not even really close, but it's somewhat close. And in this case, this pollution is going up into the air, maybe even going and kind of like saturating the clouds, actually kind of getting mixed with clouds. And then it rains down. So what ends up happening here is that the poisons get into the whatever the waste is, gets put into the environment, either because the factory is literally putting them into the environment, or because of some other things like it's just getting given off by the factory and then mixing with rain and getting into the atmosphere. But it makes its way into the water. And there are plants in the water, of course. This is kind of showing you maybe some seaweed. It's kind of I know not a great plant, but it's a plant that's in the water. And there are usually a lot of other little single-celled plants that exist in the water. These are called phytoplankton, if you ever see that word. They're basically little plants that are just one cell big. That's it, just one cell big. And what happens here is that these toxins aren't just going into the water. They are actually touching the plants themselves. And you guys know from photosynthesis, plants take in water. So when the plants are taking in this water, when they're drinking up the water, the poisons are sort of mixed with it. So these toxins and poisons are getting into the plant, but it's not very much. Very little, 0.05. The units that they usually use there is parts per million, ppm. And it just means how much of this is in a million molecules of liquid, basically. So 0.05 is very low, not a lot at all. But as you know, it's not too bad, but there's a lot of plants out there. And each one is taking in 0.05. Again, each plant, not too bad, but there are fish. And the fish eat the plants, but they just don't eat one plant. They eat many plants over many days. And so what happens here is that the poison, it isn't just 0.05 in the fish. What ends up happening is you have to add that together. It accumulates like the snow. And maybe it's as much as 1. So before it was 0.05, but now it's just 1. Still not too bad though. Really not too bad. But there's a lot of fish. And if each fish has 1 chemical of this poison, parts per million, and there's a seal who's going to be eating the fish, this seal isn't just going to eat 1 fish. This seal is going to eat a lot of fish. And so now you're going to have maybe like 12 parts per million in this seal. But the story's not quite done yet. It's a little bad at this point. But now you have even bigger predators like shark. And the sharks, again, they don't just eat 1 seal. They eat seals many times over the year. So what do you think? This says predict. What will happen to the shark? What could be the poison numbers in the shark? Are the numbers going to be like point 0 something? No. Are there going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4? No. Are they going to be like 10, 11, 12? No, because this one seal is 12, right? They're going to eat a lot of seals. So the numbers for the shark, hi, welcome. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Good to see you. These numbers are going to be pretty high. They're going to be 50, 80, 100, 150. So now we're talking about like pretty high numbers, right? When you talk about things like this, there are 2 vocab words that we're going to kind of be talking about here. You need a pen or a pencil for this. The first vocab word, we talked about accumulate. This is bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation. You're sick, yeah, go there. Oh, Abdiel is? Oh, no. All right, so go ahead and write your name on this. Everybody write your name. All right, so if you're watching this at home, we are doing the biomagnification activity. You can find it on Schoology. And so the first word I want you to write down onto the sheet. So at the top right here, you'll see it says bioaccumulation. Go ahead and write this down. Jeremy, you need a pencil? Bioaccumulation is when toxins build up inside the body of a living thing. This can happen to any animal. This can actually happen to humans too. I'm going to tell you a story about. Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story about one of my dad's coworkers in just a minute. So bioaccumulation is when toxins or poisons build up inside the body of a living thing. So this fish, right? 0.05, 0.05, 0.05. It builds up, builds up, builds up inside of this fish. And, whoops. And when you add them all together, it accumulates. It's like the snow, right? Starts to snow. There's just a little bit of snow on the ground. Then it snows a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. All of a sudden, there's 6 inches, and you go sledding. Or go play in the snow.
You write this down?
Yes, write this down. Bioaccumulation. At the top, you see where it says bioaccumulation? But then there's this other thing, that's the next word on there, called biomagnification. Biomagnification, people are still writing, I'll give you another minute.
What are you looking at me for?
Because you're so good looking. That's why. You guys have almost the same hair.
He needs a haircut.
You guys literally have almost the same hair.
He needs a haircut. You're a clown.
Should we bring clippers in here and just shave both your heads? What do you think about that? I have clippers too. There we go. We have 2 pairs of clippers. We can bring them. All right, and then there's biomagnification. Biomagnification is how the amount of toxins gets bigger and bigger and bigger, magnified, as you move up a food chain. So the plants only had 0.05. Jeremy, maybe you should move over there.
No, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go through my trash today. That's all I did. Okay,
0.05. Fish, because the fish eats a lot of plants, it goes to 1. Seal, because it eats a lot of fish, it goes to 12. Shark, because it eats a lot of the seal, it goes to 100. And you think, so what? So it's 100. So let me tell you a little story. So my dad's retired now actually, but when he was working, he worked with this guy who was like the head guy who trained other people, and he was a really good speaker. People would get called actually all over the country to go and speak at different places, and he'd have to like memorize these speeches and like speak to lots of people. And he was really good at it, like really charismatic and really just a good speaker. And one day he was on stage, and my dad was there with him, and he, right in the middle of his presentation, like totally forgot what he was going to say. Couldn't remember a thing. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm totally blank. And then he kind of like got through it, and he remembered some things. And then the next time he went, same thing happened, but it got a little worse. Like, there was a couple times during the presentation his mind went blank. And this kept getting worse and worse and worse, and he was like, oh my gosh, like, am I having like brain problems? Am I having memory problems? Am I having Alzheimer's? Like, what is happening here? Went to the doctor. No, you're not having Alzheimer's. No, you don't have memory problems. No, we noticed something's happening, but they could not find anything wrong with him. But it kept getting worse. And eventually, he went to like his 12th doctor or something like that, something crazy. And the doctor's like, has anyone ever checked your toxin levels, your poison levels in your body? And he was like, no. And so they did. And they found that he had, I think it was like 20 or 30 times the limit for this poison called mercury in his body. And they were like, you are being poisoned. Like somebody is poisoning you. And that is what's causing all these memory problems. And he was like, what the heck? And so they started questioning him about his diet and whatever. And it turned out that he lived in this apartment, and right below his apartment was a new sushi restaurant. And he and his wife like loved this sushi, and they were going like almost every day or a couple times a week for sushi. And his wife was usually eating like salmon and not little, but smaller fish. But they had this shark dish. He loved it, and he was eating it like almost every time. And he was also eating, it's just coming to me right now, he was also eating swordfish, which is another big, huge fish. And I think it was mackerel. I think the other one was mackerel, which is another huge fish. He loved those. And the wife was mostly eating like salmon, things like that. And he was always choosing the big, huge fish to eat as sushi. And he was literally getting poisoned. And it was mercury poisoning. And so bioaccumulation, if he just went to the sushi place once or twice or even 10 times, it would have accumulated a little bit. But because he had been going and going and going and every week going, it was really accumulating in his body. And it was literally affecting his brain. And because he was eating the big, big fish, the biomagnification was affecting that fish more. And by the time it got to him, he was not just getting 100, he was getting like 100 plus 100 plus 100 every time. His wife was eating these smaller fish. So she was getting like 1 or 2 every time. It wasn't accumulating in her as much. But with him, it was. And so he ended up having to take medication. He ended up having to do these like bath soaks to get all these poisons out of his body. And I think even now, he's much better. He's fine. But I think even now, he's not down to 0 yet. Like he still has some of the poison in his body. And he stopped eating there. He still goes for sushi, but he eats some of the smaller fish. And it's something that everyone should think about, right? Like, yeah, you can go and you can eat shark, you can eat swordfish, but you don't want to eat it every single day, many, many times, especially over many weeks and months, because it can really affect you. Yes?
How do you check your toxin levels?
So a doctor has to do it. There's a blood test, and I believe there's actually a urine test, too. Okay. There's a blood test and there's a urine test. Yeah, so I think the urine can tell you if they can detect it. And then the blood, and especially if it's been recent, and then the blood will really give you more accurate values. So, yeah. So this kind of shows you the difference. I'm sorry? Clear?
Yeah.
That means you're well hydrated. So that's good. So bioaccumulation, this is a picture to kind of show you. Right? When he first started eating, pretend this is a human and not a fish. When he first started eating it, just a little bit, but then he started eating more and more and more and more and more, builds up and builds up and builds up. Biomagnification, this is in the food chain because the ducks eat a lot of these. and the snake eats a lot of these, and the big bird eats a lot of these. This guy gets the biggest effect because as you move up, it builds up and builds up and builds up. All right, so in this one, Jeremy, you listening? In this one right here, we have A, we have B, we have C, we have D. I know you guys were listening, right? The animal showing the highest level of bioaccumulation is? D, right? You can see it. You can see the orange building up in that fish's body. Bioaccumulation is in one organism's body. Over time. The animal most affected by biomagnification, which one is going to show the biggest effect because of biomagnification? What color? Purple. Right? Because he eats a lot of this guy who has a small amount. This one has a bigger amount. This one's eating these ones that have the bigger amount. It's going to be a lot inside of it. Okay? All right. Jeremy, you need to go to the bathroom? Who asked me? Adolfo, you asked me. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I do.
He asked first, though, I think. So let's let Adolfo go, and then you can go.
You can take a long time.
Be quick. 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes. Sign out and take a pass. All right, we're going to do a quick thing just to kind of talk about this. Make sure you guys can practice these vocab words. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Adolfo's going to be in the bathroom. Okay. So Malika, we sit at table 3. Josie, we sit at table 4. And then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3. All right, and then Yulia, why don't you sit at table 6? Is that right? How do I feel like this? Oh, was I counting it off? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jeremy, you're going to sit at table 1. All right. Kimberly, why don't you join Yulia? Okay, people who are at the tables, you are called table people. Jeremy, go back to table 1, okay? Back to table 1. You are table people. You are always staying where you are. Kimberly, we join Yulia at table 6. Brian, join Ava at table 5. Abel, join Josie at table 4. Reina, join Malika at table 3. And Liz, join Edgar at table 2.
How about myself?
I'm with you.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Can I have hers work with me?
Who?
Her.
Me? This fine?
Yes.
Sure. You like me? Who?